Thank you and welcome to the show today. The topic this morning is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at the 21st century. And of course we have to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and where Dr. King stands in the 21st century, at the beginning of the 21st century, Dr. Lewis V. Baldwin. Dr. Baldwin is a professor of religious studies at Vanderbilt University. And of course, Dr. Baldwin, let me welcome you to the show today.
Yeah, great to be with you again.
And to tell you, Dr. Baldwin, how delighted we are to have you.
Great to be here.
And it's good to have you because we're going to deal with a topic that I think to be not only a topic that's made for you, but I think it's a very, very important topic because what we want to try to do today is to look at Dr. Martin Luther King and his relationship with the 21st century. That's and to have you to do so.
That's right.
But now, Dr. Baldwin, before we do that, let's have you to give our audience, and there might be a few people who might not know Dr. Lewis V. Baldwin from this show. I doubt if there are many but, who might not know you from this show. But give them some information in reference to your background, your education, and some of the things that were important in your life that eventually led you to this particular seat.
Well, I grew up in Camden, Alabama, Wilcox County, Alabama, which is known as the so-called Alabama Black Belt. I was born there in 1949, grew up there, attended the public schools, which of course were segregated at that time, graduated from Camden Academy High School in 1967. And in high school, I had an opportunity to participate in some of the demonstrations that were occurring in Alabama at that time, civil rights demonstrations. I left Camden Academy High School and I matriculated at Talladega College in Alabama. And I graduated from Talladega in 1971 with a BA in history and went from there to Crozet Theological Seminary in Rochester, New York. From there to Northwestern University, where I received a PhD in 1980. In 1984, I started writing about Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement. So I've been writing about, writing on that subject now for more than 20 years. I was inspired primarily by what I saw in Alabama and in Mississippi during the 1950s and 1960s in terms of civil rights activities. I was also inspired to write by my own participation, because I had a chance not only to observe, but to participate in some of the demonstrations and to read the works of people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and others who were involved in the movement. And that served as quite an inspiration for me to do my research on the life of Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement.
And so you've been involved with, as you said, for the last 20 years. And it indeed has really been a life work. A scholarly work nevertheless, but it has been a life work with you in a real sense. And so, Dr. Baldwin, what we'd like to do today, as we said earlier, is to look at Dr. Martin Luther King and to sort of have you to update. As we said before, we still believe that the classic in terms of Dr. Martin Luther King is the piece that you gave us back in 1997 called Martin Luther King. You see, and I don't think that we can top that. But nevertheless, much has happened since then, and of course you've been with us on a number of occasions. But this should give you an opportunity to talk about Dr. King and why he's significant for this particular century.
I'd like to talk about King on two levels. First, in terms of his meaningfulness for our times, and then to talk about where the scholarship is going on Dr. King in the 21st century. I always think that I'm writing 4 books on Dr. King now, some of which are collaborative efforts. I'm working with other scholars. But we all move from the premise that Dr. King is indeed meaningful for the 21st century because many of the issues he tried to address, or many of the issues he addressed in the 1950s and 60s are still with us. The issue of race has not been resolved. Dr. King, as you well know, saw race as one of the great barriers to human community. And we are still addressing that particular issue. We are addressing the issue of poverty. And I think the recent tragedy in New Orleans highlighted in a very serious way the problem of poverty, of classism, of economic inequality in this country. And Dr. King always said that another major barrier to human community is poverty and economic injustice. And I think we're still dealing with this whole issue of what Dr. King once called the haves and the have-nots. And this growing gap, these growing disparities between those who have and those who do not have. But I think the problem of poverty has gotten, in some ways, even worse since his time. When you look at the problem of homelessness, for an example. So I think his ideas about how to deal with poverty are relevant today, and also when it comes to the issue of war. We talk a lot in this country about creating a culture of peace, a culture of life, but Dr. King was about that. This is what his whole nonviolent philosophy was about. This is what the nonviolent crusades he led in the streets were about. He was about creating a culture of peace, about creating a culture of life, what he called the beloved community. So I think we have to understand him at that level.
Okay, well, let's hold it right there, Dr. Baldwin, for this first commercial break, and then we'll allow you to pick that up. And we'll be back with you following this very, very short commercial break. The topic is Dr. Martin